that introduction. Welcome to the presentation on timely consult and early information request process for drug master files, the TCIR process. This presentation outlines two areas of the TCIR process for DMFs. First, I will be discussing how the TCIR process identifies the facility discrepancies between the referencing application and the DMF. Then I will go over how this TCIR process identifies the consultable information early. The goal of this presentation is to show you the substantial positive impact of the TCIR process on the overall ANDA approval process. I will also be discussing the recently revised process for early communication with the DMF holder, which includes the evaluation of regulatory starting material designation issues. In the last portion of this presentation, I will present data such as hidden facilities by categories and types of consults resulting from the TCIR process, and also provide some helpful suggestions for the industry. Before I start, I would like to thank Dr. David Skanke for his guidance in preparation of this presentation. So what is TCIR? The Division of Lifecycle API developed the TCIR process for drug master files as part of an OPQ-wide initiative intended for early identification of ANDA review quality issues. These are type of issues that, if discovered late, may likely prevent approvals. In other words, the TCIR is one of the agency's efforts to improve the opportunities for first cycle approvals. TCIR is implemented for all original ANDA applications. During the pilot phase, we focused on two areas in which a TCIR process for DMFs can have a substantial positive impact on the overall ANDA review process. First, the identification of facility discrepancies between the referencing application and the DMF, and second, the discovery of consultable information in the DMF. TCIR process for DMFs was designed just prior to the start of GDUFA 2 and was fully implemented on October 1, 2018. It was brought to our attention by colleagues of Office of Pharmaceutical Manufacturing Assessment, OPMA, that when a critical intermediate facility is identified later in the review cycle, that causes a delay in approval. Right after fiscal year 21, in collaboration with OPMA and the Office of Program and Regulatory Operations, OPRO, we developed a process to identify critical intermediate facilities generated by inadequate starting material designations during TCIR. When the starting material is not acceptable as a regulatory starting material as per ICHQ 11, DMF becomes an inadequate major, which causes the referencing marketing application to become an inadequate major. This creates two issues. First, IQ major has longer goal dates which can delay an approval, and second, the redesignation of a starting material may generate a critical intermediate facility. When a critical intermediate is discovered late in the cycle, this causes a delay in approval if that particular facility needs to be inspected. Then the performance goal date may need to be extended to allow the inspection of the facility before approval. Let me now walk you through the TCIR timeline. Within 2 weeks of an ANDA being submitted, it is assigned for TCIR assessment. The TCIR triages have about 2 weeks to complete the assignments. Once the TCIR assessment is completed, if any consultable information is found, the information is submitted to the Division of Clinical Review in the Office of Generic Drugs for evaluation. For a consult to be submitted, we do not need to wait for the ANDA to be filed. If any hidden facilities are identified during the triage process, that information is relayed to the Regulatory Business Process Managers, RBPMs, at OPRO. RBPMs then wait for the ANDA to be filed, and once the ANDA is filed, any hidden facilities are communicated to the ANDA applicant via an early information request comment. As I mentioned in the previous slide, as of October 1, 2020, we have introduced the new starting material process. I will explain the complete starting material evaluation process in the next slide. If the starting material is not acceptable, then an IR is issued to the DMF holder. We expect a response to the IR at least 10 days before the ANDA is filed. Let's take a closer look at the starting material evaluation process in the TCIR. The starting material evaluation is done only for DMFs that have never been reviewed. This is a scientific evaluation done by the secondary reviewers similar to what we do in the full scientific review. The difference is that this evaluation is done way before we pick up the DMF for scientific review. The secondary reviewers evaluate the manufacturing process to determine whether the starting materials are regulatory acceptable per ICH Q11 guidelines. If the starting materials are not acceptable, an early IR is issued to the DMF holder requesting the redesignation of starting material. I will go over the DMF IR in detail later. Information regarding any newly generated intermediate facilities are relayed to our OPMA colleagues for assessment. You may want to evaluate your manufacturing process carefully to identify intermediate facilities upfront and relay the intermediate facility information to the applicants of all the referencing marketing applications. We need to catch all the facilities as early as possible. There's a great talk on drug substance facilities hidden and critical intermediate by my colleague Value. She explains critical intermediates and how to avoid hidden facilities, which delay an approval. Please check that out. The advantage of evaluating starting material at the TCIR stage is to identify critical intermediate facilities upfront to avoid a major CR at the end of the normal review cycle. We will now discuss the hidden facility process to see the types of facilities missing from applications. During the hidden facility process, we compare the ANDA 356H form to the DMF facility section 3.2.S.2.1. We recommend that all the manufacturing facilities, including micronization facilities, release and stability testing facilities, and critical intermediate facilities listed in the section S.2.1 of the DMF manufacturing section are listed in the ANDA 356H form. Regarding intermediate facilities, if an intermediate facility is listed in the DMF, we evaluate it to determine the criticality. If the intermediate facility is determined to be critical, we recommend that facility be listed in the ANDA 356H form. When the facility is not listed, an early IR is issued to the applicant at the time of the ANDA filing. We will talk in depth about what is in the IR comment later. The idea behind TCIR process is to identify all the facilities involved in the manufacturing process early in the ANDA cycle so that the OPMA can perform timely evaluations. When facilities are discovered late, we may have to go through additional review cycles which causes delay in approvals. Now I would like to share with you some data we have gathered since the implementation of the TCIR process in October of 2018. So far we have looked at 2,739 unique ANDAs. Out of the 2,739, there are 406 ANDAs with hidden facilities. We have identified a total of 553 hidden facilities. That means 15% of the ANDAs we have looked at had a hidden facility issue. This number is relatively high and we would like to see this improve. The large number of hidden facilities we see is an indication of poor communication between the DMF holder and the applicants. We cannot relay the DMF facility information to applicants due to proprietary reasons. We are by any means not trying to make things hard for the industry. We have an obligation to protect this information. We understand that sometimes the DMF holders do not like to relay intermediate facility information to the applicants. However, if the DMF holders do not relay this information to the applicants, we cannot communicate to the applicants about the facility status of their application. Here's a breakdown of the facilities by type. Out of the 553 hidden facilities we have identified, 171 or 31% are drug substance facilities, which includes the fermentation facilities and plant and animal extraction facilities. The large percentage of hidden manufacturing facilities may be due to having multiple manufacturing facilities listed in a DMF, but not all are included in the application. And also not including micronization facilities when micronization is part of the drug substance manufacturing process. 251 or 45% are testing facilities. This is the majority of hidden facilities we have seen. Again, the reason could be more than one testing facility is listed in the DMF, but which facility is supporting the application is not clearly stated. Sometimes DMF testing facilities may be considered as not important, or they are newly added to the DMF, but the DMF holders forgot to update the applicant. Our recommendation is that all the facilities involved in drug substance release and stability testing are listed in the ANDA 356H form. 131 or 24% are critical intermediate facilities. DMF holders can evaluate their process and identify critical intermediate facilities upfront and proactively communicate that information to the applicants. Let's now take a look at the timely consult process. In this part of the process, we identify consultable information such as farm tox data, MDD, duration of use, and advanced cancer. The TCIR triagers look at the Drug Master File impurity section, S3.2, to see whether the industry has provided any consultable data upfront. Evaluation of farm tox data to qualify an impurity often takes a long time. The sooner we submit this data to OGD Division of Clinical Review, the earlier we can get the results back to meet the GDUFA goal dates and have more approvals within the ANDA cycle. In addition to that, we also take a look at the label of the referencing marketing application to see whether there are any ambiguities in the maximum daily dose, MDD, and the duration of use. For advanced cancer drugs, if the label is not clear, we will consult those as well. We need to make sure whether drug product is used for advanced cancer to decide which guidance to follow, either M7 or S9. By identifying consultable information early is also helpful for our clinical review team to manage their workload. Since the implementation of the TCIR process in October of 2018, we have looked at 2,739 unique ANDAs. Out of those, 58 applications were found with at least some type of consultable information. A total of 62 consults have been submitted so far, which means 2.1% of ANDAs had at least one type of consultable information. Overall, we are capturing half the consult during the TCIR phase in a given year. Most of the tox consults are submitted in the subsequent cycles since the information is not provided upfront for evaluation. If more proactive at having all the impurity qualification, we can catch more during TCIR. So there's room for improvement. This pie chart provides the outline of consults by the type. We look at farm tox data, MDD, duration of use, and drug substance use for advanced cancer. More than half of the consults are for farm tox data submitted upfront. The rest is related to labeling. DMF holder can look at the label proactively and can submit a control correspondence when additional clarity is needed. I have talked about two types of TCIR communications with the industry. First, the hidden facility IR comment issued to the applicant, and second, the early IR comment issued to the DMF holder with respect to starting material issues. First, let's take a look at the early IR comment issued for hidden facilities. This comment is issued to the ANDA applicant at the time of ANDA filing. It's long, and I don't expect you to read it now. I will pick it apart and explain it in depth in the next few slides. Here's the first part. Only the yellow and blue highlights are edited to add specifics before issuing the comment. We have included all possible types of facilities in parentheses since we cannot specify what type of facility is missing from the 356H form due to the proprietary nature of the information. If the intermediate facility is listed in a secondary DMF referenced by the primary DMF, we will not disclose the secondary DMF information. We will only let the applicant know that the facility information is included in a DMF that is referenced by the primary DMF. Let's go on to the next part. FDA cannot relay status of DMF facilities to applicants if the facility is not listed in the ANDA application. So the ANDA applicant and DMF holder should communicate before the ANDA is submitted to resolve any facility discrepancies. The applicant should include all the DMF related facilities supporting their application in the ANDA 356H form and section S.2.1 in the ANDA application. If DMF related facilities are missing from your application, you will receive a facility IR. We are unable to communicate with you about the facilities missing from your application. Here's the last section of the IR comment. Please provide clarity as to which facilities of the DMF are used in your application. If only a subset of facilities listed in the DMF will be referenced by the ANDA, you need to specify that in the LOA. If you don't specify the facilities, we will assume that all the facilities listed in the DMF are used in your application. If new manufacturing, intermediate, or testing facilities are added to the DMF holder should communicate this information to all the referencing and the applicants, and the applicant should send an updated 356H form to the agency. We cannot force DMF holders to communicate the facility information to the applicant, but if you don't, it is a disadvantage to the applicant and may end up getting a facility CR. If new facilities are added to the DMF after the last cycle of the assessment, then the goal date may be extended if the newly added facility needs to be evaluated and an inspection is needed. The second type of TCIR communication is the early IR comment issued to the DMF holder. As I have mentioned before, an early IR is issued to the DMF holder when regulatory starting material needs to be redesignated. This letter is issued way earlier than the ANDA is filed, that is around 30 days after the ANDA is received. We request the DMF holders to respond within 20 days. If a complete response is not possible, at least a partial response should be submitted, identifying any critical intermediate facilities so that this information can be shared with OPMA. OPMA can add the facility to the facility profile before the ANDA is filed. Here's an example of the comment we issue to the DMF holder when the starting material is not properly designated. First part relates to all the missing information regarding the critical intermediate facility. Once we identify the starting material you have declared as a critical intermediate, we request that you redesignate the regulatory starting material from an earlier point or reference a secondary DMF for the manufacturing of the critical intermediate. Last two sections are about updating the GMP statement and communicate with applicants about redesignation of the starting material. Here are a few things you can do to improve facility communications. List all the facilities clearly in the DMF facility section S2.1. That is manufacturing, all the release and stability testing, and any critical intermediate facility. Facilities listed anywhere else in the DMF will be missed during TCIR. DMF holder and ANDA applicant should have clear communication as to which DMF facility should be listed in the ANDA 356H form. Any DMF facility changes, communicate them to ANDA applicants in a timely manner. Continuing with what industry can do to improve facility communications, the DMF holder should consider issuing a clear LOA to the applicants specifying which facilities are used to support the application. The DMF holder should communicate any critical intermediate facility information to the applicants upfront. Information regarding any purchased intermediates should be included in DMF section S.2.1. So what can industry do to improve consult process? Include consultable information such as AIMS data in the impurity section S3.2 so that they are easily found when triaging. We have a limited time due to high volume of work. Define farm tox studies versus analytical studies clearly. In section S3.2 impurity table, clearly indicate how the impurities are qualified. Analytical approach. If based on QSAR, provide the QSAR data. If based on AIMS, provide complete AIMS data. If submitting any literature data, make sure to provide all the information, not just conclusions. If not enough data, then we cannot submit for consult, which may result in additional review cycles. If the information is buried somewhere and does not get caught early, which may result in a major CR for the DMF and major CR for the ANDA. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please type them in the Q&A pod. I will be back with the panel shortly to answer your questions.